Um, Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Gerrand. I'm CTO for Cloud Services at T-Systems. I've been there for about 13 years now, before which I worked in IT in the oil and gas industry. Over the next 30 minutes or so, I'd like to speak to you about the importance of choosing the right technology, given that IT doesn't stand still, and given that IT landscapes change over time. Very briefly, T-Systems is a part of Deutsche Telekom, so we are multinational. We are the IT division for Deutsche Telekom, providing IT services to companies around the world, ranging from small little startup firms to some of the world's largest organizations. We're proud to say that we were one of the pioneers of cloud computing. We didn't call it cloud computing back then. We called it appliance computing back in 2004, 2005, and we started that with a service called Dynamic SAP. It is end-to-end SAP service, and today is the largest SAP service in the cloud with over 70 million SAPs running in that cloud. Since then, it's expanded beyond that to encompass a number of other workloads. So, in order to understand the problem that I'd like to present here, I thought it's important, first of all, to look back in time. And when you look back in time, you can essentially see that there was, certainly my assertion is that there are four key eras that we've seen in the IT industry. The first one being the mainframe era. It came, and it's not entirely died. It's still there. There's still organizations using mainframe, and will continue to use mainframe for a while. Then we saw the classic era come along, distributed IT, the traditional client-server scenarios, one server, one operating system, one application, not very efficient. Then we saw virtualization come along in the way of VMware. 1998, I think the company was founded. But we really only start seeing the first production workloads appearing in about 2004. In fact, for me, that was the first time I got a business case to work for a virtualized platform for production workloads. At that time, I was working for a company called Halliburton, and we'd been trying for years. We'd had virtualization, VMware desktop, mucking about. Great having two desktops if you're working in IT. But we couldn't get a business case to work. And it was only in about 2004 that we start suddenly seeing you've gone past that introductory phase of a new era, of a new wave, and suddenly things start happening. And ironically, this is before I joined T-Systems. That's about the time T-Systems launched their first appliance computing platform. So progress is good. We're now in the point where public cloud is taking off, and one only needs to look at what's happening with the public cloud around the world to realize that actually it's growing, and it's growing rapidly. So progress is good, but it does raise challenges. The first one is you need to choose the right wave. We've all seen certain technologies that are going to be the best and the greatest next thing, and they just suddenly die away. Or they get swallowed up by somebody bigger. Then there's the economics behind that. If you get onto that wave too soon, you're going to have to invest a lot to actually get the benefits of that wave. And we've seen that today. Earlier today, we had CERN next door, and they spoke about that. And the fact that they made the choice back in 2011 to be an early adopter, recognizing that they had to put a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of effort into developing the platform for their use. But not all organizations are in that position. Commercial organizations are there for a reason. They have to get a return on their investment. And if they're going to put all their cash, all their time, all their effort into doing the IT instead of focusing on their business, that's not going to work out so well for them. Conversely, getting onto that wave too late is also going to be a problem. How many organizations today start a new service, start a new idea and say, let's go and build it on mainframe? It just doesn't happen. Organizations are not building new services, new developments on mainframe. So that's the first one. The challenge is choosing the right wave. The second one is cost associated with that. So getting onto that wave, we said, was important. Getting onto the right wave is important, and getting onto the wave at the right time is important. The third one is riding multiple waves, and this is the one that I feel challenges most enterprise organizations today. We all hear the sort of cliche examples of Ubers and Airbnb and Netflix. These organizations have all been born in the cloud era. They've all been born since cloud was around. And as a consequence, they've built their systems, they've built their business models on cloud. So they don't have the legacy eras to deal with. Think of banks, however. Banks typically still have some mainframe left. Invariably, they have a handful of what we call classic, so physical boxes that are there for a particular reason. Most banks have fairly large virtual or private platforms now, and frequently based on VMware still. However, we are starting to see, I think, was it Santander, is a very big OpenStack user. So banks are starting to use things like OpenStack for private cloud. But private cloud is still very prevalent. Public cloud, however, is a lot smaller. However, in the last 2 years, what I've personally seen when it comes to RFPs and engagements with clients is more and more organizations wanting to move to public cloud and actively starting on that public cloud journey. Some are starting in terms of, okay, we'll start moving our test and dev there, but then there's other organizations that have just gone full out and said, that's it, we're moving. Just move the lot, get over there quickly. Those organizations, but even those that have said, that are going to move in one go, the fact is it's still not going to be in one go. An organization of 1,000 systems, it's going to take time to actually move those systems across to public cloud. So they still sit in a situation where they have to manage multiple platforms, manage multiple environments, monitor, track, maintain these various platforms. They'll be bound into certain contracts for periods of time. So, I know I should have done this the other way around. It was my assertion that classic era is well on its decline. Mainframe has kind of reached its bottom. The virtual or private cloud, in my opinion, in my assertion, was sort of at the peak of, or it is at its peak. What these figures showed me was that mostly I was right. So public cloud, what Gartner called cloud infrastructure as a service, is actually growing between 2015 to 2021 at a rate of approximately 31% year on year. Private cloud is growing closer to 15%. I suppose the other important point, the IT outsourcing growth rate is approximately 6% year on year, whereas the total IT spend, which does amount to trillions of dollars, is somewhere around 4.8%. So actually, more and more is now being outsourced. However, it's only just growing slightly faster than the overall IT spend. Classic services, however, is actually in a relative decline. It's growing at about 2% a year. So that's your physical assets, organizations going out and buying their own physical assets for their own IT. So that growth rate is smaller than the IT growth rate. So it's actually it's becoming a smaller share of the total IT spend. So public and private are growing. Public cloud is obviously growing significantly faster. It offers much greater economies of scale, but there are still challenges, there's still barriers to get onto public cloud. Just last week, I met with an ISV who provides core banking software for tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 banks. They can use public cloud in certain circumstances and in certain jurisdictions. Tier 1 banks won't go anywhere near it. However, he's been working in the banking sector all his life. His assertion to me was that within 20 years, no bank will own a data center. Every single bank will have everything on public cloud. So that was his assertion. He pointed out that everything is done regulator by regulator, not client by client. Once a regulator approves it, it'll be done. So I guess the so what of this is, how is this relevant to OpenStack? So we said there were 3 problems. 1 is getting the right wave. 2 is the cost. And 3 is how do you ride multiple waves at once? So the riding the right wave, I think if you look at the Gartner data, if you look at what the hyperscale public cloud providers are doing, public cloud is a reality, and it's not going away. It is the next wave. So we're safe there. And guess what? OpenStack provides public cloud. The second one is with regards to cost. And I think this is where it gets interesting. Once again, OpenStack addresses this. OpenStack is open source, so it protects to a large degree from lock-in. Organizations can adopt a cloud stack. If they've got the in-house capabilities, the in-house skills, they can do it themselves. It's open source. They can go and get the code direct from the website. For those organizations that don't have the in-house skills or their strategy is to outsource, there's organizations like T-Systems, there's organizations like Red Hat and Canonical who have the skills, who have the capabilities, who have the technology to provide OpenStack-based platforms, both as private or public. And then finally, working in multi-cloud. And for me, I think, again, this is where OpenStack really stands out. We heard in the keynote this morning, OpenStack is not developed by a single company. It's not proprietary code. It's open. It's developed by individuals. It's developed by companies. It's developed by end users. So the developments are being done by people that are experiencing the problems that the product is resolving. So OpenStack is actually resolving real life, real business problems. It's not being forced in one direction or another. The other aspect to this is the fact that OpenStack is both private and public. And then you add the bare metal, the Ironic module into it, and suddenly you can do classic workloads as well. You can do the traditional physical workload requirements. There are a handful of workloads, a handful of applications that have to be on physical bare metal. So with OpenStack, you can actually run a platform that covers public, private, and classic workloads. So this is why T-Systems selected OpenStack. We launched Open Telecom Cloud 2 years ago. It is a public cloud service. It runs on OpenStack. The current release is Mikata. It's available in Germany. It's available in Singapore. There's another one coming online in South Africa. But when we looked at this from a service provider, managed service outsourcing perspective, it just made absolute sense. OpenStack was something where we could support our clients both, or three ways, with their traditional physical workloads. We could support them with their public cloud aspirations, and later this year, early next year, we'll be able to support them with private workloads. And the beauty of OpenStack as well, you're not bound to a specific hardware set. It's hardware agnostic. So you are able to leverage existing investments rather than have to go and chuck it out and use specific hardware sets. So where's Open Telecom Cloud being used? We heard this morning, CERN use it. They have a very large installation themselves. However, even that isn't large enough at times, and for burst-out capacities, they use Open Telecom Cloud. Other areas, other places we're seeing this being used in the automotive industry. One of our clients is using it for their vehicle design and modeling. So, like CERN, they've got a set amount of capacity, and at times they have to scale out quite significantly to do massive workloads, modeling, simulations, and so on. So they're using it for that. We have a pharmaceutical company in Germany that they've been a SAP client of ours for many years, and they've made the strategic choice to move to public cloud. And they really struggled with this. And where they've settled eventually is on a 5-year plan to get there, but they're getting there in steps. And Open Telecom Cloud is where they're running their non-productive SAP workloads. Internet of Things. We have a IoT hub in Germany where one of our clients, all their machinery have sensors in it, and all of that data is fed back through this hub into the Open Telecom Cloud, where they then can do big data analytics on it. Human genome sequencing, we're seeing a hell of a lot of this these days. I mean, the volume of data there that they have to compute and play with is massive. And in this model, they're rather than using CPUs, they're using GPUs for the compute. A few others. Here in the UK, we have a mobile device management firm. They chose it less about the compute and the storage and the networks and the simplicity and so on. They chose it because it's European. It's a European company. We're headquartered in Europe, and the data center is in Europe. So with things like GDPR coming along, suddenly it makes sense. They are providing services to many European clients and have to comply with the new data laws. We responded to an RFP just recently where a Belgium company has simply said, shut down my data center in Pittsburgh, move the whole thing over to Europe. So GDPR is actually a big driver for many organizations now wanting or needing to be compliant, and therefore European-based companies suddenly make a lot more sense. For those of you, if anyone happened to be in Amsterdam last weekend, there was the IBC, and Sony announced their new Hive platform, which is an online media and publishing platform. So what it means is news broadcasters can be out in the field, they'll record something, they can upload it directly onto Open Telecom Cloud and execute the rendering of the news reports and send it straight out. So there's no need to actually go back to base and upload it and then do the rendering. They can do it directly from where they are. And a small example is an online retailer here in the UK. They sell health food supplements, and they've moved their entire business onto Open Telecom Cloud. So the range of uses is quite varied. So I guess in closing, why we chose Open Telecom Stack. It is secure. It is simple. Not from an administrator's point of view, mind you, not what I've heard. Administrators say it's a very difficult platform still to administer. But from a user's perspective, it is exceptionally easy. It's really easy to use it. It is affordable. You can reuse old hardware. You don't have to just go and bin the lot. And finally, it is open. It's open source, and as a consequence, there's no vendor lock-in. It's an OpenStack API. So long as your provider complies with the OpenStack API, you can move your workloads. If you're not happy with a provider or you need to move to another jurisdiction, you can do it. Thank you very much.